So I mentioned last video that self-control is the other side of love. And I wanted to break down what that looks like in regular day-to-day life. So, story time. So where I sit at work, I've got two computer monitors that are right here, and the window's over here, and there's a hallway over here, and then way over at the end of the thing, there's a door where all the people come through. And I'm a naturally curious person, and as I've mentioned it before, I like to look into people's souls. So there's this like impulse that happens when I hear the click, click, click for the door to unlock, for the door to open. I get this thing where like, oh, who's there? Who's coming in? Oh, who's there? Who's coming in? And my coworker mentioned to me the other day, she was like, yeah, you got springs in your behind and we need to take them out. and I was like, self-control is a virtue. So here we are. Now, how does that relate to self-control being the other side of love? Well, in a very small way, this popping up to look is consistent with the other thing that's been going on in my life, which is not having self-control with the making eye contact, with the looking. And so this impulse is directly correlated to that leading on behavior, which I'm really not proud of, that really needs to die. And it originates, from this impulse, which comes from the thought that someone else's attention will make me happy, which comes from the need that I have this deep, bottomless chasm of please affirm me. I want to know that I'm valuable. Yeah. So, now that we've identified like the character arc of this behavior trait thing that's going on, need, thought, impulse, action. So there's two ways to kill this whole thing. And like the first thing is identifying that this action is not cool and it needs to die. And like a lot of times we try to kill an action, but we don't work on the rest of the character arc. And my friend Backrow Baptist made this point that, his porn addiction didn't end until he began to work on all the issues stemming from deep childhood wounds that were completely like not related to sex at all. But that's how it was manifesting. So the behavior and the action is not going to like totally get rid of until the rest of the thing gets solved. And something really important to note is that a lot of times sin and disobedience is not trusting God to meet the needs that He's put in our hearts. Super uncomfortable, I know. And it definitely means lots of waiting for God to fulfill those deep-seated needs. But the thing is that if we give into temptation to try and meet that need in our own strength, we're totally biting into the enemy's ploy to like get us hooked in some addictive behavior that is going to keep us from experiencing holiness, experiencing God's presence in our lives, experiencing His power as He works in us and through us in ways we can't even imagine. So killing these actions that are holding us back from purity and godliness, yeah, super mega important. So back to the Megan at her desk, like, ooh, who's there? Ooh, who's there? These springs gotta go thing. I found that as I've started, like, when I started initially choosing to be like, oh, I'm not going to give into this action, there were moments where I still did because the impulse was trained and it was still really, really strong. But I noticed that as I began to resist the action, and I was like, the door opens, click, click, and I'm like, I'm not going to look, I'm not going to look, I'm going to kill this impulse. Like, the impulse would still be really strong, but resisting the behavior began to weaken the impulse over time. And now it's finally begun to be minimized to the point where it's a thought of, oh, the door is opening. oh, the door's opening. Okay. And the thought process, the thought process of getting to here, it's not going that far anymore. It's more like here. It's like, oh, I'm thinking about the impulse, but no. And so it takes less time to resist, and it's a fast. That's the short version. I'm thinking about this while I make vlog. It's just coming out fresh right now. So like that cycle of that thought process is shorter. So I'm like, oh, and then I find I'm getting more work done because I'm less distracted with who's coming through the door. And God totally made that point to me. Like, first off, my coworker was like, when you bounce up and down, you're distracting me. And then God was like, you're distracting yourself. And I was like, that's not cool. Okay, so help. And so that's like the action and the thought process. And then the need over here, this great big depths of chasm of Megan needs affirmation. Yeah, I said that. That was, yeah. You don't have to affirm me. It's fine. This is YouTube. But I love you guys. And I've been trying to pray for you. So anyways, so there's this need of deep affirmation. It's like, okay, hi God, help. So here's something really important that God's been doing in my life to meet that need. And number one, as I spend time with him, as I read the word, he makes it come alive to me more. He makes it realer. And that's really, really important. Those verses, I will never leave you nor forsake you. You know, I will pull you out of a miry pit, and though the righteous man falls 7 times, still I will uphold him with his right hand. And Isaiah 41:10, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, help you, uphold you. That's probably Amplified Translation. I will strengthen you, help you, uphold you with my righteous right hand. Like I read that out loud to myself because I need to be reminded that God is there for me. And in the midst of living away from home since I was 17 years old, there's a lot of that, like, I'm an emotional female in a world full of options and most of them bad. How do I survive? So the second thing in God meeting this deep cavernous need in my life has been being where I'm supposed to be. Because there is a blessing that comes when you are where you are supposed to be. Let me repeat that. There is a blessing that comes when you are supposed to be where you are supposed to be. There. So when and where are 2 very important factors in this like coming together place and time thing. And my point is this, if you're where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there, God will bring the people there and the moments and the experiences to you that you need to, in my case, feel safe, feel valuable, feel validated, feel affirmed, all those things that I need from God in a healthy way, things that he wants to give me through the Christian community. That's huge. And I find that when I'm being obedient, he provides that as a part of the daily routine. He gives me those hugs that go on extra longer, and it's just like, oh, I can release the tension in my shoulders because for this one extra moment, I feel like Megan the human, and I'm safe, and I don't have to worry. So, and that's like a really real thing, because like we hold a lot of tension in our bodies that we don't even realize. I know, at least I do. And as God releases it, I'm like, I didn't know I was afraid of my shoulder. And you know, some of you guys are more like this. Like, I don't know that I'm afraid of my shoulders. And God's like, no, you really are. Please let me help you with that. So, we need to let him help us with that. So, yeah, self-control is the other side of love. And in all of this, having self-control and choosing to be obedient allows God to love you. And when God loves you and you know that, it helps you love yourself. So it all comes together, and that's really, really important. So, my name's Meg. I love my Jesus, and I believe in living inside out. And next time, I'm going to talk about probably the most controversial headline in this entire video series. So, get your seatbelts on, because this is gonna be cray-cray.